from Larry Dossey's journal in January 2012. You can get this online, download it for free. And the title is very interesting, Symbolic Diseases and Mind-Body Co-Emergence, a challenge for secondary immunology. We know that through all the research on secondary immunology that stress affects the body and you get disease, but it doesn't tell you why you would get a particular disease in a particular area. How can the body be that smart to figure out how to manifest your story in a particular part of your body that makes it meaningful? And that's his challenge to the researchers out there, to come up with a way to really think about this and study it. Then he wrote a book which you can get as an e-book, How Meaningful Disease, How Personal Experience and Meanings Cause and Maintain Physical Illness. And this goes even more into depth with his thinking. And here's just one case example from his book, Symbolic Rheumatoid Arthritis. A woman developed very aggressive rheumatoid arthritis complicated by gold therapy-induced bone marrow failure. So they're putting the most toxic drug possible they can think of. And these days they would probably put even more chemotherapeutic agents into the regimen. The disease arose in the context of a very enmeshed marital relationship and social context about which she used the following language. I'm in a bind. I can't get moving. I'm captured, tethered, enslaved, and indeed crippled by living in a small backwater town. So she was extremely frustrated and angry, turned it inward, and got an autoimmune disease. Psychotherapy addressing these issues led to an enduring remission 12 years without any drugs. So that's impressive information. And you can actually think about autoimmune diseases in a very symbolic way and say, okay, you're getting antibodies to your own tissues. It's a disease of self-hatred. I mean, the bottom line. That's really what we're talking about. And if you've got antibodies attacking your own tissues, you've got internal anger and issues turned inward. And autoimmune diseases are common and becoming more common. The most common one is Hashimoto's disease. And it's very common in women, and it's the most common autoimmune disease there is. So you might want to look at how you're attacking your fifth chakra if you're dealing with that. So, once you get into the chakra systems and the Chinese medicine systems and the organ symbolisms, you might begin to get a clue why you get a disease in a particular area. And Carolyn Mace addresses that, obviously, extensively. Now, there are two other books I just came across that have gotten the mail in the last month. Your Body Speaks Your Mind by Deb Shapiro, who's a body worker and a Jungian therapist. This is the opening story in her book. I've only got through the first chapter so far, but this one struck me very impressively. Jenny is 65. She's broken the same hip 3 times in her life. First time, her fiance died and she fell off a horse a week later. Broke her hip. Age 45, her mother died. She had a car crash, broke the hip again. Age 57, father died, fell down the stairs. And this is her insight in the process. With each death, she transferred her dependency to the next person in line. She said, I vowed to find out who I am so I can walk by myself for once. And, that's an incredible insight. Now, Brian Broom does point out that sometimes people heal without even getting the insight. And an example he uses is a lady who has terrible skin thickening, what they call connective tissue disease, mixed connective tissue disease. Her skin was getting thicker and thicker. It happened, she'd been healthy her whole life, and she had an accidental fall at a mall at age in her 60s, broken ankle or something, and she felt like her invulnerable shield had been disrupted, and she said she withdrew into a shell. And she went back in her house and never went out again, and her skin getting thicker and thicker and thicker. And they were going to treat her with steroids and all the usual things they would do. And after like a year or so, one of her friends came in and said, you need to get out more. She took her friend's advice and went out, and the skin thickening went away. So, that kind of symbolism is just really interesting when you actually hear it. So, now, of course, this does include accidents that occur. And why would they keep occurring, the same time, and then you have to invoke the "there are no accidents" clause. But, And finally, this book, Your Body Believes Every Word You Say by Barbara Hoberman Levine, is actually not a healthcare professional, but a patient. And she was diagnosed with acoustic neuroma, a benign tumor of the eighth cranial nerve to the ear, which causes deafness. Unfortunately, when it gets really big, it causes nerve paralysis elsewhere in the brainstem. So she developed paralysis of her 7th cranial nerve to the face, and she could paralyze her voice box. So she lost her voice, And in her words, she said, I lost my nerve, which is a nice metaphor for both of those nerves being damaged by this tumor. And then she realized that the only way I was able to feel my suppressed fears was when they were expressed by way of the nerve damage. And then she went on to get fascinated by this whole topic and went on to write a book about it. And this is a very interesting book, and it's about over 10 years old by now. I heard about it years ago, but just reading it now. It wasn't part of the medical school curriculum. Now, this is a really interesting experience. I had a couple of weeks ago, I went and spoke about this concept at Duke, to the Duke Integrated Medicine study group. The students had just started a little group after all these years to invite speakers to come and talk to the students about integrated medicine. I left in 2004, and there hasn't been much going on since then, so I was thrilled that this happened. And they invited 2 other physicians to join me on a panel to do Q&A with the medical students. And I told the story about the somatic metaphors, and this one doctor goes, you want to hear a story? He said, I had acute rhabdomyolysis a couple years ago, which means all your muscles break down. They start to dissolve. Floods your bloodstream with broken proteins from your muscles, and they flood your kidneys, and you can die of renal failure. And he's wound up in the ICU with a very high creatinine kinase, which means his muscles are breaking down. He has no known risk factors. There's usually an infection that triggers it, or hypothermia, or hyper or hypothermia, drug reaction, and they searched for any clue, and they could find nothing. He managed to survive with all IVs flushing his kidneys out and got through after a week or two. After recovering, he realized that during the week leading up to the illness, he was under massive deadline pressures at work and felt like he was Atlas holding up the world. And he said he came to that insight all by himself a week or two later when he's thinking, what was this about? And then he realized eventually his muscles gave out and he almost died from the crushing burden. He was writing all these grant deadlines and all these other things. He was under tremendous pressure and his muscles just collapsed. And he almost died. And of course, while he was in the ICU, no one would have asked him, oh, were you dealing with any crushing burdens the week before you were there? No, that wasn't one of the questions that was asked. So finally, this is the website for my book, Let Magic Happen. And it's on Amazon. And chapters 3, 10, 13, 14, and 16 cover almost all the stories I've included here, plus a few more. And the newsletters, video blogs, and 300 web references on the website that you can use. And the newsletters are focused a lot on EFT, but I've started branching out and doing a newsletter on each chapter now. And I've got a sign-up sheet for the newsletter in the back if you'd like to be on the mailing list and find out about other things that are happening. I'm at the OHS clinic on Monday and Thursday afternoons. That's Oriental Health Solutions, to do EFT hypnosis, or if you want to explore your metaphor and need some help working with that, that's actually what we're going to do in the second half after the break. We're going to start getting into that, give you a taste of how to play around with your own metaphor and see what you can do to change your metaphor, really is the name of the game. And I'm actually going to be also doing 2 EFT workshops in the next 2 months. One at Chiropractic Partners for Michael Krasnov in Durham, and that's going to be general introduction to EFT. That'll be the first one I've done at his clinic. And then I'm going to do one on weight loss at Oriental Health Solutions. The one at Michael's is February 26th, that's a Tuesday, and the one at Oriental Health Solutions is the March 28th, that's a Thursday night. And there's a couple flyers in the back there. And if you're on the newsletter, I'm going to send out an announcement. If you're on the mailing list, I'll send out announcements about that. And they're usually $30 group interaction. You get to learn all about EFT in an hour and a half. So, but we'll do a little EFT in the second half here along with the metaphors. So I think April just flashed the light, which means we're about ready for the break.
Yes.
Let's see if there's anything else. That's going to be it for the slides. So we'll come back and do the exercises. There should be handouts that I passed out or people have picked up on the way in that have the metaphors on the back, the guidelines. And see if you can get a pencil or a pen at the break in so you can fill out the metaphors as we go. And I'll sign books if anybody wants to buy books.